Hedgeless Horseman here. It's April 19. This will just be a video done out of boredom, pretty much. Not much happening today. Gold and silver down. But as always, who cares? If you're invested in gold and silver specifically, you're not trading anyways. And if you're invested in mining stocks, you're not invested in the actual gold and silver anyway. And yeah, I mean, nothing new on the Western Front. Juniors are dirt cheap, so it's again what gold and silver is doing in the short term is beyond noise, basically. Even if gold came down a lot, juniors should still be way higher than they are, and they will go higher one day. And just to point out, I mean, how ridiculous I think this market is. This is one relatively passive portfolio I help manage for a family member. It's made up of, I think, around 40 junior stocks right now. I basically don't trade in this at all, almost. I mean, if I get dry powder to deploy, I'm obviously buying something, but it's always fully invested. Never really much trading. I mean, I might sell some shares to buy another share once every 2 weeks, perhaps. Sometimes it's actually been months before I did any reshuffling. And you can see, I mean, it's last 3 years it's up, I think, 3 times what GDXJ is up. And this is with juniors at, not all juniors obviously, but it's like junior sentiment being here, and it's still 3xing GDXJ. So I think that just highlights. I mean, you don't need to do much really. I mean, pick some good-looking juniors. I prefer hodling growth stories. You can be diversified. You will of course not. I mean, you can't really have, insane returns if you're diversifying. But it's like this is, beating the index by a mile without almost doing anything. Of course, you need to actually, pick some good stocks, etc. So it's not like you can buy anything and it will outperform an index. But still, I think it highlights just, that you can basically sit on your hands. Just stick with good companies as long as they have, a growth profile that you think they could grow over the next year or two. You can just stick it out basically, and the returns will be good. And I mean, most people will, I think, scoff at a return like this, but I promise you, there are not many people who average 180% per 3 year. Again, 95% don't even beat an index. So this is, I'm very happy to have to be able to provide this kind of return to a family member, and it doesn't take much out of my time because I do the due diligence on the stocks I like, and then I just buy the best hodl cases out of them, pretty much, and some other which are not really hodl cases, but with gold juniors, especially gold juniors being this cheap, there are quite a few I've picked up anyway, because I mean, microcap exploration plays, they're just dirt cheap, not really probable growers, more high risk high reward type, but which I think will, when we reach this level again in terms of sentiment, I think could on average return a few 100%. And I also want to make a point about just looking ahead of the market, picking up some tidbits of information that will play a part in a junior going forward, but which is not really focused on in the current. And this is from a recent interview where Quinton Henney upload today, actually. Quinton Henney interviews Pacific Ridge VP Exploration Danette Schwab.
It was chlorite, then we're talking about an assemblage that you find kind of on the edges of a core of a system. So we might still be on the edges of core.
That's
getting those.
Okay. You're now getting me excited. Okay, so I'm gonna add a little color. Look, chlorite is usually the mineral that you find in what's called propylitic alteration around, like you said, around the more of the periphery of these systems, not necessarily in the core. And when you get to the core, so chlorite is basically a think of it like a mica that's kind of green, and it's usually scattered through the rock, kind of gives the rock a greenish cast to it. But as you go inwards towards the yolk of the system, like if you think of like an egg and an egg white and the egg yolk, you start to see what's called potassic alteration. And you mentioned biotite a minute ago. Biotite is also a mica. It's usually black when it's in this type of system, and it has potassium in it. So we consider that a potassic style of alteration. So what you're saying is that basically most of the alteration you've seen so far, this chloride, you think is indicating you're on the periphery. And now that's interesting because there's some other deposits around the world, really big porphyries that I know of that have this kind of picture, and it's the big ones that you see copper.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll cut it there. This was very interesting in my opinion, because basically what they're saying is that the alteration they're seeing right now leads them to believe that they're at the edge of a porphyry system. And that's quite interesting given how good results have been this early on. So again, this is not a news release like assay results where it's like boom bam, you have the results, and either the market might love it or hate it or whatever. But just this tidbit of information obviously has very high potential for the future of this company, Pacific Ridge, and the news releases over the next X amount of years. Basically, okay, they've been hitting these kinds of holes, very very good holes in BC, first tier jurisdiction, and they think that they might just be in the, let's say, the worst parts of a porphyry system. So then one can start to imagine, okay, when this notion starts to filter in with the market participants, etc. It's like, okay, what do you think? Is that gonna increase the hype going forward, or decrease the hype, or be neutral? I would say it increases the hype, because now all of a sudden we're one can start to visualize a future where they hit the mother lode, so to speak. And just, okay, if it's this large right now, for example, and this is just, let's say, one side of the halo of something that's much larger, etc. So I think from a hype premium or speculation premium perspective, etc., this is a positive. I think this will add to the pressures to the upside going forward, as they start drilling again and learn more about the system. And I also think that what was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, just basically, it hikes up the blue sky potential, and thus it hikes up the implied potential right now for the Cleul project. With the with the understanding that they might still be at the edge of something. So this is obviously a net positive find. I mean, I was quite happy with the results they've had so far, but it's like, okay, if they're not even into the core of this system, let's say, and these are the peripheral lower grade a peripheral lower grade area, that means that it's opens up the upside potential, let's say. So again, what I like about news releases, etc., is okay, what effect can it have on the future, and how will people respond to it in the future, let's say, because the present is not where there's opportunity. It's front running, in my opinion. News releases having some form of base case, what you think will happen, and then front running what people will think about said news releases, etc. So this is, changes from what I knew about the project, changes the potential of the project itself, and when that starts to percolate into the minds of Mr. Market, etc., I think there's going to be increased hype going forward for Pacific Ridge. And I think, this is a roadmap basically I did on Pacific Ridge earlier, or have shown earlier. We fill the gap, and again, I think this is a net positive, and around, who knows, maybe 1st of June, we'll see some drills in the ground, etc. So I have a quite big position in Pacific Ridge, and again, I'm expecting something like this. So obviously I'm not selling now, and I'm not selling because gold is down, for example, today, because stuff like this is more important than if gold is down on April 19. I mean, it might as well be up tomorrow. It's like you have no idea, but we know that this kind of information changes the implied value of the company until further notice. Labrador Gold also put out a news release. Labrador announces new discovery of near-surface gold at Midway, 2.7 kilometers north of Big Wayne. Big Wayne is obviously where they started drilling and found the high-grade outcrops, and where they've had success. And here is Midway. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, not a barn burner hole, 5.71 grams per ton over 3 meters, but it shows that there are more gold-bearing structures with potentially economic gold values. And here you have the Appleton Fault Zone, and here you have Big Wayne. So this is on the west side of the Appleton Fault Zone. And we know from Newfound Gold that they've had success at the JBP Fault Zone, which is to the right of the Appleton Fault Zone. And if I had to guess, I'm guessing that this is cut off. Let's say these results are, somewhere around here, and you see as well in the Newfound Gold slide that there are some historic hits to the west of the Appleton Fault Zone as well. So I mean, this is obviously stuff that I think affects both companies pretty much, because they share the same, they share the same structures, at least around the Appleton Fault Zone, and just hikes up the potential of the belt. So I don't mind it at all to see these hits at Kingsway, both as a Labrador Gold shareholder and a Newfound Gold shareholder, because this just, both companies keep showing that, okay, the potential of this belt is quite extraordinary, and I mean, it's good enough that they are finding this at the Appleton Fault Zone, and Labrador has had success at Big Wayne. Labrador Gold has not had the, let's say, the like the aha moment where they actually find a real bullseye and can expand on that. I mean, they recently released very, very good hits, but they haven't released Newfound Gold type hits. But it's still, I mean, it's quite cheap relatively to Newfound Gold. Obviously, I think the market cap's around 100 million, and they have like 10-20 million in cash or something like that. So I don't think Labrador is necessarily cheap, but I don't think it's necessarily expensive. And one of these days they might have hit one of these Keats zone lookalikes, etc., and they can expand on that basically. But it is a high risk, high reward play. Newfound Gold obviously way higher priced, but have a lot more meat on the bones at this point in time. But Labrador has like 4 or 5 drill rigs going, etc. So a lot of action, and it could turn on a dime. Montero recently put out a video which I thought was quite interesting, where they have the new CEO and Chris going over primarily the Golden Hill project, and like they discuss in the segment about exploration plans. I mean, they have contracted drill rigs for 5,000 meters, and will basically start from underground, as if I remember correctly, and will pretty much drill straight into the known veins that are open and can be visibly seen underground. So it's like, again, there's no assay results now, but okay, what does that say about the future of Montero? Let's say fast forward a few months. I mean, the chance of hitting something should be pretty good if you basically can see the vein underground and you're drilling straight into it. So yeah, I mean, again, look farther ahead in the market. It's dirt cheap already. So I mean, if they hit some holes that are close to the historic holes that's been drilled, it's like, okay, would the risk be to the upside or downside from this valuation? And again, given how likely it appears that they are going to hit something, yeah, I like it. And of course, the market doesn't care at all right now, but the future becomes the present at some point in time. So what I like to do is, again, buy the future for the price paid today, where the market price is in tomorrow, and then wait for the future to become tomorrow, pretty much. So there's basically a patience arbitrage. And on a note of, let's say, front-running sentiment, etc., this is a slide I've done, an emotional roadmap for SK mining. You can probably read. I'm not going to read everything here, but it appears that the stock is in another consolidation. This looks like a box type consolidation akin to what Eloro is going through right now. And you've seen, I mean, this was like an ascending wedge, and this might have be considered a bull flag or whatever. But after it breaks, ramp. After it breaks, ramp. After this broke, ramp. So now I simply think we're at the next step of another consolidation. And based on what we know, etc., I think SK will be one that can do very well going into drill start and waiting for assays, and hopefully post assays with actual results. So I think this will be one of the more, let's say, hyped up junior drill campaigns in the second half of this year. And we're 19th of April. Yeah, maybe 1 month and a half, I would guess, from drill start. I'm assuming multiple rigs, so there's going to be potential for multiple discoveries, because you've probably seen the 8 targets, etc., around TV and Jeff. Strong narrative, a reason for why this is priced like a growth stock, etc. Premium jurisdiction, obscene blue sky valuation. I mean, if you add all the targets together, etc. Strong silver component as well. Barn burner holes potential, more TV type hits, or even a Jeff where they hit like 35 grams per ton AU equivalent over 10 meters in the 2020 campaign, I think. Proof of concept, we know Skeena Resources nearby 1 billion valuation on grades more akin to TV and not akin to the original SK Creek deposit. And then what I think, I mean, going even longer out, or perhaps might happen soon actually, I do think some jurisdictions will have I mean, Canada is a premier jurisdiction and typically gets higher valuations, but as per Thomas Kaplan, he believes there will be a time where there will be a bubble even in tier 1 jurisdictions such as Canada. And anything can change, but it's like, yeah, I can see that, because you see stuff all the time in over the world in terms of jurisdictions, and I would guess that Canada would actually be one of the better ones. And when, let's say, fear ramps up, I think that there might be an even higher premium put on tier 1 jurisdictions. And also tight share structure, strong hands. I mean, yes, we've seen choppy movements, etc. But mostly it appears to be a quite tightly held stock. Okay, nothing here. Nothing there. Okay, maybe this was it. Just want to do a short video, I guess. Just, to sum up today's thoughts, gold, silver, not doing well, along with most commodities and oil, etc. It's like, I don't care. I'm looking at this. Whether gold is cheap or expensive right now, who knows? I mean, I think it's cheap. If juniors are cheap, yes, both in severely undervalued in relative terms and absolute terms. I mean, they are just simply priced way too low. I mean, they're not reflecting the gold business, the value of the gold business right now. And if some of these junior valuations would be accurate, nobody would be stupid enough to go out and look for gold, for example. So it doesn't add up from a logical perspective anyway. So it's like, I expect this gap to close one day, and I hope that I'll be a part of most of that ride. So I'm still in perma buying until something changes, basically. And the second, just you can do well by just hodling growth stories. It's super boring in a way because most people are action junkies, including myself. But take these videos, for example. That's one way to actually engage with the market without actually doing anything. And a third point would be, again, to pick apart news releases or interviews, etc., and try to think, okay, what information is really relevant, or at least will be relevant in the future, and try to front run that, because there's a bunch of geological stuff here that's in this video, which is great and helpful to more technically minded people, perhaps. But like, one key takeaway for me is that, okay, even I as a non-geo can understand that, okay, that if they might be on the edge of something that could be much bigger and even perhaps higher grade, that's obviously a big thing. And by extension, the implications that could have for both news releases, due to the project itself perhaps being even better than one thought, and also how it will affect or percolate in the minds of the investors going forward. Because at the end of the day, it's Mr. Market that does this stupid pricing. So it's like, doesn't hurt to be able to front run what you think 95% of people are gonna think or feel in the future. Consider me biased. I own shares of all companies I mentioned. I think probably all are sponsors as well. So consider me biased, and make up your own opinion. Do your own due diligence, and I can't guarantee anything in terms of chance of success or anything. This is just how I think about things. Thanks for listening. Bye.